Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bob. Happy birthday to you. That's from Petra in Germany, me and Boyan in Spain, Ali in California, and from my mom in El Paso, Rachel. And this is to the wisest man we know. Bob, your story's been so helpful and funny for so many people. Here are some of our favorites. We will try to put them in a nutshell. First, the Eat Your Toast story. Our intention is to put these stories in your life story chapter of my life story that Boyan is making into a website. Well, you are sitting at a counter having breakfast with a lady in Al-Anon who is telling you her problems. And the whole time she's sitting there holding a piece of toast, saying, this and that, and telling you the problem and the problems and what's going wrong and on and on. And she's having the toast and waving it in the front of you. And finally, she says, well, Bob, what do you think I should do? You, of course, say, well, eat your toast. My next favorite story relates to step 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. You are so tricky, Bob. I call this the 90-10 rule. And it's because I called to complain about my wife about something in the very beginning of the program. And then you asking, what should I do, Bob? And then I was asking, what should I do? And you said, well, Jim, by percentage, how much of it is your fault and how much is it hers? And I said, well, 90% was her fault and maybe 10% mine. And you said, okay, well, just apologize to her for your 10%. So bad, Bob. I knew you had me at that one. Next, and finally, is my trip when I went to Phoenix to Albuquerque. I call it my airplane story. This is otherwise known as telling God to make this the best day of my life. This was when I took a new assignment in Albuquerque and waiting for my flight with a stopover in Phoenix. I questioned myself, why am I going? Worrying that I may have made a mistake and because I didn't know anyone there. Well, I called Bob from a payphone. This was before cell phones. I expressed my concerns to Bob, and he said, well, Jim, it sounds like it's time that you tell God to make this the best day of your life. And I said, what? What if he gets angry? And of course you said, well, Jim, you're telling me a lot about your perception of your God. Well, that didn't make me feel any better. I said, well, okay, Bob, I'm still a bit concerned that I'm going on a plane in a few minutes, and what if the plane crashes? And you said, well, maybe that would be the best day of your life. Again, this does not make me feel better. And finally, you said, well, Jim, when you do go on the plane and get to Albuquerque, why don't you call me tonight and tell me what happened? Well, I was a bit concerned, and I got on the plane headed to Phoenix. So about halfway there, the captain came on the speaker and said, no need to be concerned. However, we will have to go back because it seems to be that there is some type of malfunction, but it is not anything serious. Well, I think you might guess what went through my mind. This is it. The plane is going to crash. So I was thinking, what does this mean? Well, what it meant was that I realized that I was fine and calm about the idea if the plane were going to crash. In other words, I did not fear death, if you will. Therefore, I recognized that night when I reached Albuquerque and called Bob, and I told him the plane might crash. However, I was not afraid. Certainly, that was one of the best days in my life. By the way, this was even more vivid than when we landed and we were passing fire engines along the runway. Other than that, it was a wonderful trip.